And the FBI has now executed a new search warrant at a Washington Post journalist's home in Virginia. The administration says this is part of an investigation into a government contractor that they accuse of illegally retaining classified materials. The Post reporting FBI agents have now seized this reporter's phone, 2 laptops, and a watch. One of the laptops was a personal computer, the other a Washington Post issued laptop. Investigators tell the Post reporter that she's not the focus of this probe, that the target is a government contractor, and according to the criminal complaint, is alleged to have had secret documents in a lunchbox and his own basement, which could be a violation of the rules. Attorney General Bondi alleges the Post reporter also published illegally leaked information. Of course, that is, when you cover the government, what happens all the time. It is also worth noting the complaint, which may be partial, may only be the start of the story, but the complaint itself does not accuse that contractor of leaking classified information. Now, this is obviously drawing intense scrutiny because while the government does have wide latitude in legitimate national security cases, and there have been times in the past where we've seen, as a last resort, reporters basically dealt with and investigated, or their materials investigated in security litigation, this comes amid a time where the Trump DOJ under Bondi has very little credibility, and the president has mused about going after all kinds of opponents and has done so. And he and his allies have viewed many in the press, as you know, as their sort of political opponents. Times reports that it's exceedingly rare to search a reporter's home, and it refers to a 1980 law that bans searching reporters unless they are the suspect they are the suspect in a criminal probe. Obviously, for example, being a journalist doesn't mean that the authorities can never deal with you if they have something separate from your journalism that you did wrong. Washington Post executive editor says this extraordinary aggressive action is deeply concerning and raises profound questions and concern around the constitutional protections for our work. Some of this was also telegraphed because the administration, in contrast to past administrations in both parties, had recently diluted the rules that protect journalists. So we knew they were already going down this road because there was some level of intent. If this is a valid factual pursuit, if ultimately they overturn and find materials that supports the investigation, everyone will look at that and report that out. But it comes at a time where the administration is going after all kinds of public opponents. It's going after the Federal Reserve Chair. It's using criminal probes to intimidate. And so there are obviously real questions about whether this pursuit, kind of breaking a line we haven't seen yet in the second term, of a mainstream major journalist's home and their property and their materials, whether that itself is an exception that's lawful or part of a larger selective prosecution campaign. As for developments in that campaign, look at the targeting of lawmakers. Democratic Senator Lisa Slotkin now says she has federal prosecutors investigating her, and their claim involves something that all lawmakers have very protected. It's literally in the Constitution. It's called the Speech and Debate Clause, and they refer to things she said in a video that was about the military following the law. You can think about the obvious irony or Orwellian twist of a lawmaker who, of course, has authority over writing the laws, reminding the military to follow them and not do unlawful orders or campaigns. And that itself is what this administration now says could be a crime. Slotkin is objecting to Trump's playbook, saying this is intimidation and physical intimidation meant to shut people up. Democratic Congressman Chrissy Houlihan says she was also contacted by the DOJ and is being investigated over the same video. And the Pentagon is using its powers, and this is different than criminal probes, but also suggests possible corruption because it is using the powers it has for its brave men and women who serve, which of course is supposed to be always patriotic and nonpartisan. But there are questions about political corruption at Hexas Pentagon and whether they are abusing the rules and authority they have over a Democratic senator from that video, who happens to be a retired naval officer, Mark Kelly. Now, in normal times, people who go from military service, showing their public service, their valor, their bravery, into Congress, that's usually considered a plus. But let's be clear. Kelly is saying, and his allies are objecting to the fact that it looks like the Trump administration is treating it as a kind of a minus. as a way to get leverage over him and now endangering his military rank and something that people who do public service rely on, is pension payments that come out of the past service. Senator Kelly is fighting back, filing this lawsuit against Hegseth and the department, trying to block what he says are these retaliation efforts. And these are the latest targets of a larger crackdown that we have been reporting on, because remember, even in MAGA land, where they say many things, admitting that they have an actual enemies list, that they would break rules and law and go after their enemies at the DOJ, that was too much for many in MAGA. And so when questioned about this originally, when they were taking in their jobs, confirmation hearings at the beginning of this year, they all resisted and said they don't have an enemies list. But you can look at it. You can see how they've weaponized investigations, subpoenas, probes. On the left in the green, you see some of these have already been dismissed because they are so weak, although they take time, money, and energy even when they end quickly. And on the right, you have cases that are going forward. Congresswoman indicted. Former Trump official Bolton indicted. And new this week, lower right corner, Jerome Powell facing a criminal probe because he says he's resisted Trump's unlawful efforts to kneecap the Fed to get a sugar-high economic plan to try to help Trump politically. Now, here's what Trump is saying about all this.
It's limited by my morality, and I have a very high grade of morality, so therefore it's limited.
Not the Constitution, not the courts. That's what I thought you were going to say.
Well, the Constitution and courts, that goes without saying. But you're asking me what really can stop? We'll never get to the courts. We'll never get to the Constitution, because I want to see what's good for our country. And you know what? The courts want to see that too.
Donald Trump doing an interview there with CBS, which has been under scrutiny for how its editorial choices, after trying to cozy up to Trump, after settling lawsuits, now having new leadership, is trying to basically be a friendlier media outlet. What you'll also notice, if you keep track of this kind of thing, is that Donald Trump thought the Venezuela effort would be a big win for him. I mean, clearly from the way they promoted it and touted it and did all their press. And yet, two-thirds of the country doesn't understand why we'd even be trying to run Venezuela, and it's basically not for that operation. And then Trump started doing more and more press. He did a long New York Times interview. I just showed you the CBS interview. There is clearly a view at the White House from trying to change the Fed policy for the economy, to trying to do a lot more press, to trying to sort of distract from the Epstein failures and a lot of other things that have been going on, where this president can see there are problems. He's just trying to shout them down, paper them over, and intimidate anyone who points them out, rather than maybe address the underlying problems that are dogging his actual presidency and leadership of the United States.